All right. Thanks again and welcome to Breaking Barriers, Protecting Abortion Access in Kentucky. My name is Ananicia Williams, and I am really happy to be a part of Breaking Barriers Council. On behalf of ACLU Kentucky, Breaking Barriers Council, we are so delighted that you decided to join us about a necessary conversation that is centered for the state of Kentucky. This is your opportunity to learn about the fight to protect abortion access and also how you can get involved. But before we get started with the wealth of knowledge, your opportunity to ask questions, we really want to allow you to know what is Breaking Barriers Council. And so just so you know, you can find more about Breaking Barriers Council on ACLU Kentucky website, but the Breaking Barriers Council is a group of experts and advocates from around Kentucky working to reduce racial disparities in maternal and infant health and improve outcomes for all Kentuckians. This coalition includes birth workers seeking reproductive justice in Louisville's West End, doulas in Appalachia, physicians, other advocacy organizations, and people who have personally experienced the challenges facing pregnant Kentuckians and their families. Together, we are learning from those most affected by these issues so we can work together with a unified strategy. And I am going to hand it over to Michaela Hayes.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Ananicia, for that welcome. Thank you all for joining. We know that during this time that folks have just had lots of questions. Folks want to be educated, and part of Breaking Barriers, that's what we strive to do. So I know that there have been a lot of questions about how we ended up here, though lots of us in the repro movement have been in this atmosphere and have been trying to ensure that the right to abortion access stays alive. We're here in a post-Roe world. And I know that some folks have questions about how we got here. So I have a little presentation here that I want to share with you all, walking you through the history of abortion access in the United States, and then wrapping up with what it means for us here in Kentucky. So I'm gonna pull up this lovely PowerPoint. All right, so let's start with our first case, the infamous case that everyone knows and has probably been quoted more times than ever within the past month, and that's Roe v. Wade. And this is where we started. It was a Texas law criminalizing abortion except for life endangerment, and it was held unconstitutional. The U.S. Supreme Court during that time said that the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment protected a person's right to choose, and in that established the trimester framework, which later became the viability framework, of which we saw within the past couple of years of being like that 20-week cutoff, and then some states have an even later term abortions. But this is the infamous case. This is where it all started, and this happened in 1973. So we'll go to the next slide. And then we moved on to Kcv Planned Parenthood. And this was in 1922. And I just also want to say that during that time, there was never, I guess, like a calm in the storm. Once Roe v. Wade was decided, anti-choice folks continued to push to overturn that case. And so it ended us here in Casey. During that time, the Supreme Court again affirmed Roe v. Wade, in that they established the undue burden test, which we've seen a lot here in our Kentucky cases about what it means to place an undue burden on people's right to choose. But one of the things that did happen in Casey is that the Supreme Court did say that states can restrict abortion if laws restricting abortion do not impose an undue burden on women seeking abortion, meaning they cannot place a substantial obstacle in the path of a woman seeking abortion pre-viability. So what does that mean, right? That's a lot of verbiage. That's a lot of legalese. So what that essentially meant was that the court was saying states can pass abortion bills, which we've seen across all of our mostly Southern and Midwest states, that doesn't unduly restrict them. So there's arguments on both sides of this. And so, of course, our view is that any obstacle that creates a burden to people accessing healthcare is a burden. But in that, we've seen like let's see, ultrasound bills. We've seen transfer transport agreement bills, a lot of stuff that I'll get into later on when we start talking about Kentucky specific. So we'll go to the next slide. And then we're gonna jump all the way to whole women's health. And so this was the prominent case. It was the first case that really started to show, I think, us just how at risk abortion access was starting to be, though it was a 5-4 decision to hold that the Texas law requiring admitting privileges was unconstitutional. Casey's unburdened test required the courts to consider the burdens the burdens a law imposes on abortion access together with the benefits those laws confer. So what that means is that before Whole Women's Health, think of it as Casey was all about, does this place an undue burden on the folks who are trying to access abortion? And then Whole Women's Health came and said, yes, we should definitely, look into the undue burden that is being placed on people's access to abortion. But we should also consider what the states are trying to do here. And so this is what really opened the floodgates. And after 2016, we began to see an enormous amount of abortion bills be passed and be put before the floor, again, in mostly Midwest and Southern states. So we'll go to the next slide. And then we ended up in June Medical. Again, this was in 4 years, we're back in front of the Supreme Court. So like I said, that momentum to really overturn Roe never stopped. So we're here at June Medical. It's a Louisiana law requiring abortion providers to have admitting privileges. Again, and if you think, well, didn't you just say that in the case in 2016? You did. There was another case that the same case was brought before the Supreme Court because, again, that push to really restrict abortion healthcare was very vigilant. And so the court voted in a 4-1-4, which essentially means 4 for the majority. There was 1 who was concurring and then 4 who ultimately dissented. But ultimately the law was still upheld. But it caused more confusion because we saw that the Supreme Court began to attack that undue burden standard. And this, if you think back to 2020, this is during the Trump era. So Trump had already elected new justices upon the Supreme Court, and we began to also see that switch in the Supreme Court to a more conservative view as well. And we'll go to the next slide, which brings us to where we are today. So about a little over a month ago, the Supreme Court officially overturned Roe v. Wade. And so this was a Mississippi law. It was a 15-week ban. And the question presented was whether all pre-viability prohibitions on elective abortion were unconstitutional. So this comes during if you notice, it's all pre-viability. So in between June Medical and Dobbs, of course, we saw influx of 6-week bans, all right total bans, trigger bans, 15-week bans. A lot of these state legislation was being targeted specifically to kind of nick at that pre-viability standard that was essentially created in Roe and Casey. And so the majority opinion was that the Constitution does not confer a right to an abortion. Roe and Casey are overruled, and the authority to regulate abortion is returned to the people and their elected representatives. Specifically for those who may not have dug into the case or even read op-eds or tuned into news about this case, it was really hard for some of us, specifically because this notion that the courts took was a very contextual view, and that means taking the language exactly as it says. And if you take something that was written so long ago and say, well, there isn't explicit language that says that this is a right, and then conclude that therefore there is no right, it really draws into question how we got here as a nation, right? The Constitution was not meant to be this very siloed document that never changed. It needed to evolve. It needs to evolve, and it needs to continue to take into account where we are as a like in our world. And so it was really hard for us to kind of grapple with the decision, not only just because it overturned Roe v. Wade, but because we now know that the Supreme Court has taken a really contextual view of the laws that are being challenged and brought before them. I think there was a lot of media attention around Clarence Thomas and some of the things that he said in this opinion as well. And we know that part of his reasoning in overturning Roe v. Casey was also an attack on other prominent cases that have really helped improve the lives of all of us, including same-sex marriage and the right to contraception. So in the weeks to come, in the years to come, as we continue to have this majority conservative Supreme Court, this is what we're faced with. But that doesn't mean that all hope is lost. There are thousands of people, including everybody here on this call, who are continually working and will continue to work. The same way that when Roe was decided, we continue to see the antis push to overturn it. The roles may be reversed, but we will push even harder to make sure that we are able to reestablish this for the futures to come. So we'll go to the next slide as I begin to wrap up my piece. But let's talk about Kentucky. Like, what does this mean for Kentucky? And so, like I said, it was in Whole Women's Health that began to have that, well, let's, obviously take into account the undue burden on people accessing abortion care, but let's also consider the states and what they're trying to do. And so specifically here in Kentucky, we've seen an influx of abortion bills to be passed. And I just have a few highlighted here around the 6-week ban, the trigger law, we have the transfer and transport agreement, we have the ultrasound law as well. And so to break those down, the transfer and transport agreement meant that abortion clinics had to have these agreements with local hospitals and EMS in case of complications. We have ultrasound. The ultrasound law which also required those seeking abortion care to the physicians had to at least offer for the pregnant person to view the ultrasound and to hear the heartbeat. And then again, just bans, right? We have the 6-week ban, we had the reason ban, and then we had the trigger law. And that trigger law is what is being challenged currently that I'll talk about later as well. But that trigger law was essentially enacted to say that as soon as Roe v. Wade was overturned, that Kentucky would essentially ban abortion throughout the state. So we'll go to the next slide. And so for a few weeks before the ACLU jumped in to challenge that law, we didn't have abortion access here in Kentucky. Abortion access has been established. We do have a 15-week ban in place, but up until 15 weeks, folks are able to get abortion access here in Kentucky. But still, what does that mean, right? When we're talking about undue burden for folks, what does it mean for folks in Kentucky? And so this is what our landscape looks like. Both of our abortion clinics, both EMW and Planned Parenthood, are in Louisville. And so that means that folks are driving at max 4 to 5 hours just to seek healthcare, because abortion is healthcare. And this is the landscape that we're in. So we'll go to the last slide. So like I said, the ACLU of Kentucky has challenged this. Before I dig deep into the case, I do want to start by saying I do not work at the ACLU of Kentucky. So if there are specific questions about the lawsuit, or if you have any questions about the challenges, please reach out to the ACLU of Kentucky with those questions. But I do want to give folks just an overview and an update of where the case is and what's going on, because I know it can be hard to kind of keep up with all the media headlines and things. So let's start with the case was filed in state court. And so I also want to paraphrase that all the previous abortion restrictions that were challenged have always been in federal court. But because we know that the Supreme Court has a more conservative view, we'll begin to see a lot of these abortion restrictions being challenged in state court. So it was brought before state court to block the trigger ban and the 6-week ban. And so the challenge there was brought under the Kentucky state constitution, arguing that our state constitutional right to privacy protects the right to an abortion, even if the federal constitution does not. The Kentucky courts have held so far that our state constitutional right to privacy is broader and more protective than the federal constitution right to privacy, which is great for us. Since then, there have been some hearings. There was a hearing on June 29th, and then the court issued a restraining order blocking the laws, the trigger ban and the 6-week ban from going into effect. There was an evidentiary hearing on July 6th. Both sides presented expert witnesses and testimony. And then both sides also had post-hearing briefing, which you can find on the ACLU's website. And then on July 22nd, the court entered a temporary injunction, which would block the laws from being in effect while the case continued to be litigated. This order is a way that we still have abortion access in Kentucky, which is amazing. It is a great feat when we are continuing to see other states continue to find their ways and get support to make sure that folks have access to abortion, even if there is an effective ban in their state. Of course, the Attorney General has already appealed and continues to fight these court opinions in the meantime as we prepare for trial. But right now, as I said, there's a 15-week ban, which is a component of House Bill 3 that was passed this past legislation that is in effect. But up until then, folks have access to abortion. I know that was a lot. I hope that you all found this meaningful and helpful. But just wanted to give folks a brief overview of where we were. Here's how we got here, and there's still tons to do. So we have an amazing panel for you all to continue to hear more about folks on the ground who are impacted by these abortion restrictions, and so that we can learn how to best serve and where to put our energy, where to put our time and our money. So thank you all so much, and I will turn it over to Katima and our amazing panelists.
Thank you, Michaela. You did amazing. Thank you for that information. I know I needed a complete overview as well as myself. So I want to thank you all again for joining us today. My name is Katima Smith-Willis. I'm a part of the Breaking Barriers Council. And we're going to have just a really nice chat with our panelists. We have 3 amazing folks here today we're just going to kind of go over the things that Michaela touched on and see how we're all doing with this process of, abortion access, making sure we're staying educated and, kind of just see how we're all feeling during all this. So we'll start with Stuart. Stuart, if you want to kind of just give us your name, well, we already know your name, but if you want to introduce yourself, your pronouns, organization you're with, and your location.
Yeah, so thanks for having me, first of all. Thanks for giving me a spot at the table. I'm Stuart Walker, and I work for an organization called Sweet Evening Breeze. We're here in Louisville. We do provide resources for LGBTQ youth that are experiencing homelessness. And a lot of these youth are at risk of being pregnant or seeking an abortion. So this is, while I don't work in a reproductive organization, this is something that we fully anticipate having to deal with. So yeah, my pronouns are he, they, and thanks again for letting me join.
Thank you. It's so nice meeting you. We're going to kick it off to Chanel.
Hello, everybody. My name is Chanel Helm. I am the state consultant for Sister Song, the Southern and national organization for reproductive justice led by Black and Indigenous and other people of color. We do a lot of amazing work around awareness, birth justice, as well as getting reproductive justice where it needs to be and bringing it back. So I'm also with Black Lives Matter Louisville. I am the strategic core lead organizer there and do a lot of movement work throughout the South.
Beautiful, thank you. And then we'll also kick it off to Elle.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elle. I also go by Eleanor Grano. My pronouns are she, her. I'm with Jane's Due Process. It's an advocacy organization in Texas that helps minors access confidentially abortion and birth control. Our abortion services are currently on pause, but we're still helping young people access birth control and free Plan B in the state of Texas. What I do at Jane's Due Process is I help lead our youth advocacy work at the Texas legislature and at the State Board of Education. Using like online platforms like TikTok, Minecraft, and Instagram to really mobilize young people to take action. And I provide a lot of support to young people and guide them and empower them. This work is really hard. And I think sometimes they come into the work really just like, not naive, but like full with enthusiasm. And this work is going to take 20 years to change. And so a lot of what I do is just like keeping them engaged and like creating space for them when they're disappointed that change doesn't happen as quickly as they want it to happen.
Thank you for that. All three of you are super busy folks. So like I said, we really appreciate you guys taking time out to kind of chat with us today and everybody and to kind of go over stuff. So we're just going to kick it off with some questions, kind of get the conversation flowing. So to start off with, anybody can go first. We'll kind of just let this flow. What brought you all into this work, the reproductive justice fight?
I'm a mom of 2 kids, and so safety and how I need to raise my children and the resources that are available to me is what brought me to this fight. It's also clear that reproductive justice isn't only just about reproductive health, it's about everything that maintains reproductive health. Where can I find help at? Is it accessible? Also, how do I find joy? How do I find healing? Can I do that in the safety of my own home? How can I defend myself when I'm around professionals of institutions and I'm worried about my family? And so that's the reason why I came. And since I've been doing the work, I've had to be a abortion doula, support people with getting funds to where they need to get funds. I do want to amplify that it's not always about just paying for the abortion. People need help with housing. They need help with their bills while they're going through a situation and such. And to remind people that this is a well-care issue. Abortion is not only just about having a baby and being pregnant. It is about the maintaining and the well-care of that person's family and community.
I love that you touched on all things and not just abortion. I think people think, the other side is like, they just want the abortion, but there's so much more to the abortion access than just the abortion itself. So thank you for touching on those. Whoever wants to go next. Elle, I'll call on you. You can go.
Sounds good. I think I came into this work a little differently than most people. I spent a lot of 5 years working in hospice, so end of life care, where you focus more on bodily autonomy. And especially when people are at the end of life, they don't always get to choose how they want to leave this world. And a lot of it is just reinforcing agency and that people have the decision to make the best choice for them. And so that's kind of how I came into the work. And then I got involved with my local abortion fund, and I made the transition to work for an abortion fund.
Thank you for that. Not least.
Yeah. And then, so I'm not a reproductive worker, but what got me into helping out the LGBTQ youth community in Louisville was just your run-of-the-mill existential crisis during the pandemic. I was doing administrative work and it was soul-sucking, and I decided to do something else. So.
Hey, and you know what? You're doing something. That's what matters. And I think that's what, we need people like that in all areas of this fight. So I really appreciate, the work that you're doing as well, which leads me to the next question that I wanted to ask you all. What is the most challenging part of this work that you would say? We can go back to Chanel and then Elle, and then we'll do that like that.
I think the most challenging work, no, you're fine, is that people misconstrue what reproductive justice is and the support that's needed for it, really. A lot of folks really look at it as a reproductive freedom issue, and without reproductive rights and reproductive justice, we can't have reproductive freedom. And so it makes it very difficult when we're trying to get laws passed, when we're trying to get basic information to people, which is the reason why we're here. There's so many misconceptions about what is taking place in this moment. And we know so many emotions are filling up the space as well. But we don't want people to ignore those who are the most vulnerable, and we don't want to sabotage the situation ourselves, right? And we know people want to get out in the street, but there's a lot of organizing. I think somebody brought it up, the administration work. I'm going to laugh because it's annoying, but it has to be done. If nobody else is going to document our stories, we have to. And we want to be there for the folks that have had abortions, all of these legalese people that are on this call, and the folks that take care of us as well.
Thank you for that. I love that answer.
Yeah, I think one of the most challenging aspects that we're seeing now that Dobbs has, Roe was overturned, is just like some abortion funds in the South have had to pause their work, right? As we understand the new legal landscape that we're in, specifically funds and organizations in states with trigger bans. I think one of the most challenging aspects of the work is that people are starting to think, and I'm starting to see these conversations online, is like, we should only donate to funds that can still fund abortion or continuing to fund in blue states. And it's challenging because, you know, we can't give up on the South. We're here because, you know, a lot of people have given up on the South historically in the past, and it's to keep people engaged and to continue to want to fight for access for everyone, including people living in red states and gerrymandered districts.
I think for me, the most difficult part is honestly just only being able to offer a band-aid to these solutions, and not being able to address the full issue, you know, by yourself. So that's probably the hardest part for me, is the emotional labor that goes into it.
I agree. I think that we kind of forget about the emotional part of it, which is kind of why we're here today. You know, it feels good to know that it's not just us, because sometimes in these kind of fights, we feel alone. It's a huge toll and it's a huge weight. So I think I'm glad that we're all here today to be able to have these conversations and to get our feelings out there, because without having this talk, you know, we might kind of lose momentum. So speaking on feelings, what are your general feelings about the Dobbs decision in specific?
My general feelings is this is just another way to distract what is necessary and what we need. We are in a time, I'm glad we talked about the pandemic. We have entered a new era. We could be focusing on collective healing. We could be focusing on collective welfare, healthcare. We know is in a battle for the states, especially in the South. We could be focusing on making safer pathways for our children, and the people who have to decide on getting an abortion. But also, like, you know, many folks get an abortion who are couples and things, and we want to separate people in that retrospect. It's been a bit frustrating that it would happen all right now, and this would be their focus. So I'm just hoping that, like, in this time period, we're just really like holding ourselves, holding our communities, holding people like you see here, and all the work that they do, so that we can support others, and just make sure that we fight back really strong, whether it's with community support, legislation, or supporting all of those abortion doulas and everyone who makes a way for somebody to go get help.
As someone who processes feelings, and it takes 3 months to process mine about Dobbs, it comes in waves. The grief comes in waves. It's really just so hard to hear the calls and to talk to people and to refer out, but it's just, I don't know, there's so many feelings. There's sadness, there's grief, there's anger. And then there's fighting to feel hope, right? And to continue on and to continue to push that, change is going to happen, but it's just going to take a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, I second that. A lot of sadness, a lot of grief that's kind of just weaving in and out day by day. I think the only feeling I'm not feeling is shock, which makes me sad. Yeah, I can't say I like didn't see something like this coming, but that doesn't make it any easier. And at this point, there's just an overlying like exhaustion that I think Chanel's right. We've got to take care of ourselves and take care of our community to be able to fight back. And so it's really important to stick together and care for each other.
Elle, I really appreciate your honesty about how long it takes for you to process these emotions, because I'm such an empath. I feel it all too. So 3 months, totally feel that, because it is hard. I mean, it's very hard, but like Stuart just said, we have to take care of ourselves and we have to take care of one another. So that kind of goes back to what Chanel said, we have to hold our communities tight. So I really appreciated you guys' comments on that, which takes me to, does Dobbs impact access to birth control in specific?
I've been finding that it has not. This moment has been trying to intimidate people into thinking that everything is a restriction, and everything is not restricted. I think when it first went down, it was just like, okay, where the lawyers at? Let them do the legalese part. Let's get everybody activated so we can make sure that the awareness goes out and folks aren't scared or make some very irrational decisions right away. And that's exactly what we didn't want to do. We did not want people to get scared. Some folks did. I had 2 mamas not be able to get the abortion in a very dire situation because they did not know what was going on. And it's really heartbreaking that we would make so much confusion, and I'm saying we as a collective group of people, when it's just so easy just to be able to get the information out, find out where contraceptions or anything else are at, and support those folks who need the help getting them. So we've been able to get more folks hooked up with Plan B, be able to get that out for free. We've also been able to make sure that people are aware of what is restricted and what isn't restricted, and getting that information out about other contraceptives as well.
Yeah, I agree with Chanel. Like Dobbs, in and of itself, the ruling doesn't impact access to birth control, but it has emboldened, I think, a lot of people who are anti-abortion to find what's the next thing that they want to restrict. In Texas specifically, we've seen, so what we do in Texas, we have this repro kit program where we deliver free Plan B to teens who live more than 100 miles from their nearest Title X clinic. A Title X clinic, for those of you who don't know, is a clinic that receives Title X funding from the federal government, and they're able to give free or low-cost birth control, any type of birth control, to young people who are undocumented without parental consent. However, so as we've been doing these repro kits where we've been delivering free Plan B in birth control deserts of Texas, we have seen some local cities get really upset that we're delivering free Plan B to people and trying to see if like businesses, whether it's legal for businesses to deliver free Plan B from their business, like even though they say it's over the counter. So I think there's instilling fear that's like starting to simmer in the background. There's a lot of confusion that even journalists, frankly, don't understand the difference between Plan B and a medication abortion. So you can see it in the background that it's going to be an additional conversation that we're going to probably see being highlighted in the coming year, especially as in the state legislature.
Sorry, Stuart, I was talking and I was muted. Good old Zoom, gotta love it. I love that you had touched on the difference between, you know, how people in your city are getting upset or in the community about the Plan B and versus the abortion medication in specific. I love that this conversation is making that very transparent, that there is a huge difference between the two, where it's as a contraceptive versus, you know, medically necessary. So I think that calls like this, and even just like having like forums about it, just simple education on this matter will take people a long ways and kind of like lessen the confusion that's going on, because I think that with the access of birth control, that's getting wrapped up in other things that I think that we could keep separated and teach about each individual subject. So that's what I want to say about that. Go ahead, Stuart. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to completely echo Elle and Chanel. It's while there's not like legal restrictions, it's psychologically restricting. When you continue to get things taken away from you, you just immediately go into this like, well, it's hopeless kind of mindset. And while there are still options out there, they're hard to access psychologically and socially because we're confused. It's intentionally confusing. So.
And you just touched on, you know, with you saying intentionally confused, and you touched on my next question, because I was going to ask, you know, what do you all think are the social, psychological, and economic ramifications of a complete abortion ban or forced birth? Like, how do you all feel about that in specific? I really like how you just basically said the psychological part of it, but economically wise, going back to what Chanel was saying earlier, how do you all feel those ramifications are going to transpire?
Even before this moment, they were already transpiring. I think what got discouraging for a lot of us, especially Black women, Indigenous women, brown women, we've been fighting against reproductive injustice for millenniums. It has always been an issue for us. And I don't want to make that a very long historical piece, but for a lot of folks, everything in this fight really just got started with Roe. And we heard a lot of people say that, oh, it's been a long, hard 50, 60 years. And it's just like, baby, you know who you're talking to. This skin's not fair on purpose. I mean, on accident. But it's been discouraging for people to not pull in context, so a lot of cognitive dissonance of like where we are in this moment and what that means. The people who are being objectified in this moment are Black women, are trans people, are non-binary people, are brown women. I mean, we still have women looking for their children at detention centers, and now you want to restrict reproductive justice and healthcare for them. I'm loving what people are bringing up about like what is technically abortion. Anytime that baby has to be removed, those processes, that entire situation, that is technically an abortion. And so now we're playing with those words, that is playing with people's healthcare, their insurance, their well-being. It's very complicated. And so so much education and so much awareness has to take place. I've been telling people it's like 5 main things we got to worry about. We know we were angry, but we have got to maintain healing. We've got to maintain this narrative. We have to understand what policies are and taking place and what they are saying. So many people haven't even read the decision that came down and just spurting things out at the mouth, and it's misconceptions and it's making misinformation. Also, the disinformation is taking place. We must always continually push direct action and show up with our bodies or without. We do cute demonstrations, but we also have to maintain that we are going to have to do enough outreach that we are reaching everyone. So even in this moment, I do want to applaud a lot of male folks who came to the table, who stand on the front lines with us. Our action team, our security team is always made up of male folks. And so they are always there amplifying like who all of this involves. And in this situation, it's involving everybody.
Yeah, just to expand on what Chanel said, a lot of the fears that are also happening as a result of, you know, abortion bans and forced birth, it's also making people afraid to have wanted pregnancies. We already know the Black maternal mortality rate is really high. In Texas, we have 5 million people who are uninsured because we didn't expand Medicaid. So we don't have the resources to support people who are uninsured and are being forced to give birth. We also haven't done anything about, Black maternal mortality, as well as like the delay for miscarriage, and what we already know that people are discriminated at hospitals when they don't have health insurance. Miscarriage is being like delayed by like a few, like 3 to 5 days that we're seeing, like, which can put people at risk for sepsis, which is how you can die by poison getting into your bloodstream. So I think it's going to have ramifications where people don't feel safe to even have wanted pregnancies. It's also making it difficult for people with infertility to go through IVF, especially when we see in states with personhood bans. It's going to make it more difficult for people to even have wanted pregnancies, as well as being able to control when and when they don't want to have children.
Just with the population I work with, most of our clients are experiencing houselessness or unstable housing. And I can't help but think, these people are more at risk for having or for seeking, wanting to seek abortions. And so one of the ramifications of that is that there are going to be babies growing up on the streets or in unstable housing. There already are, but there's going to be more. And there's going to be trauma, just tons of trauma collectively, individually, not even just emotional, but physical trauma. And this stuff is already going on, but it's just going to get worse and worse if it happens. So
it's going to get worse, and it's like, it's already happening so frequently in the states. It's almost like they're ignoring what's already there in front of them, and worrying about what we're doing with our bodies or with anybody's bodies. And so I really it's a very unfortunate case, but the work that we're doing is very important and it's just very important, because if we're not doing this, like you said, it's going to just add on to the trauma that's already existing in front of us. We can't fix one thing without fixing another. So, hopefully it's a very unfortunate case, but I think that we're doing a really good job with the work and making progress. Going along with progress, I want to ask you guys, how can we be more inclusive in our messaging and public education about abortion access as it pertains to the LGBTQ folks?
would like to go ahead and answer this one first. So there's, the language is terrible. Doing some research before this panel, the most inclusive term I found for people seeking abortions was sexual minority women, which is still not inclusive at all. We forget that gender expansive people, trans men, non-binary people, they still get pregnant. Whether it's unwanted or wanted, they still need the right to abortion access and reproductive health. So it's really important to use inclusive language like gender expansive or people seeking abortions, instead of people with uteruses, which seems to be the most popular term right now. It would be better to just say people seeking abortions. We are, as the trans community, LGBTQ community, consistently left out of the conversation. And yeah, we're just consistently left out. So it is really important that we include the LGBT community in this conversation.
I like to say more than just include, follow their lead. I think the other issue we were so angry with in many different places, it was just like getting slapped in the face with so many times creating tables, so many times if the table is there, like you said, inviting people. But also if we're here and we name, these people are missing, whoever they may be, and even specific people because of their leadership, and you don't follow that, you put a lot more people in jeopardy. And so that's been one of the largest and the most frustrating parts, because you cannot fight for someone else, without hearing from them, without taking care of them, without making sure that if you created the space, and I get all of that, egos are wild. I've created this space and I've been here long, don't nobody care. Move out of the way, because this is not your fight. You are not on the front lines. The front line is not about you, Betty, Jane, and Kathy. The front line is really looking at the Keishas, the Sochis, and those non-binary folks who are fighting in the doctor's office to be seen. Many of us, especially natural born folks that are women and male folks, we don't have to have that fight when we get into the doctor's office. For somebody to be seen and to be heard over what their healthcare is, they have to fight for that. And that is every day, and that is all the time. And it's also very exhausting. And so while we're saying, oh, we can battle this in court, we'll allow them to name what it is that needs to be battled and step back, or just come away from it all altogether, so we do not harm any more people.
Yeah, thank you so much for all that you guys have, you all have added to the conversation. At Jane's Due Process, what we just do is we lift up trans-led orgs in Texas, and I think it's highlighting and amplifying their voices and what they have to say on the topic, and reminding our supporters how trans justice is reproductive justice and how we are working towards the same liberation together. And it's a very similar fight that we're all experiencing, and collectively together, if we join forces with each other, it's going to make the fight a lot easier, because there's power in numbers.
There's power in numbers. I love that. I love that a lot. You guys have said some really amazing things. It's making me reflect during this call. So I'm going to do some much needed reflection after the call. I really appreciate it, because I think we all need this right now. We all need a little bit more education. We all need the extra knowledge. We all need that extra boost right now for this fight. So I really appreciate the information and the feelings coming from that specific topic. So what issue area do you think needs the most attention right now? Whichever area you think, and where do you think it needs the most attention?
I definitely think access is the most attentive area. It includes everyone, and we wouldn't have really so much conflicting information if we all just gathered what we know, where it's at, and how to get it, and get it to the folks that are there. But also outreach. There are amazing and dynamic organizers across every spectrum, and just building with them. But I also want to amplify that grassroots gets it done. So making sure that you are pouring into your grassroots organizers and grassroots organizations, and making sure that they have the things that they need so they can get there. Hi, baby. He's so serious.
Oh yeah, he's so serious. Ellie, you can go ahead and go, or Stu, it doesn't matter.
I would just say, I would echo that access is the area that needs the most attention, and who's not being able to access care, specifically those who can't afford to fly out of state for whatever reason, if they're undocumented and they can't pass the border checkpoints, if they just don't have the resources to have IDs, because a lot of people that have experienced incarceration don't have IDs either, and it's a hurdle to get identification to be able to travel out of state. And so when we think about who are those that are most impacted, it's similar to young people, right? Who can't leave the state, or who do not feel safe traveling as well, with trans youth, right? Going through TSA can be a really horrifying experience and traumatic experience. So I think the area that needs most attention is access, and who's unable to access care in this new post-Roe reality.
And I like how you touched on that. I really like how both of you all said access. so far, especially in the rural areas. You know, we really have to make sure that we're venturing out there to make sure that they're getting the access that they need as well. I just really wanted to put that out there because it is essential to make sure we're reaching everybody. And not everybody has these resources that we have right here today. So I really appreciate the access topic. Sorry, Stuart, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think that access includes access to mental health. I think access is obviously very important, but it's a process, right? So like that's going to take a long time for us, and the immediate need right now is healing and being there for people who are directly affected by this right now and in the moment. And sometimes the best thing we can do is just be an ear or a shoulder to lean on. And so I think taking care of people emotionally, with your boundaries and everything, is going to be one of the most helpful things we can do, especially if you are not a person who does this kind of work, or don't have the resources like we do to create a panel or to lobby or whatever. One of the most important things that you can do as an individual is going to be to just kind of be a support person.
Go ahead, Chanel.
Yeah, I just wanted to definitely amplify everything that we're saying, and then make sure that it is stated really clearly. It's coming up a little bit in the chat about who are vulnerable and those that have been oppressed. Those are the folks that you listen to. And I do want folks to understand we are not one. While we are a part of humanity and we are a part of human, we are all not treated equally whatsoever. So that's a really fallish thing to say. And we are not all seen as having the tools and the resources as everyone else. So we really do need folks to understand that, there are going to be brown folks who are going to be totally ignored in this situation. There are always trans and non-binary people who are always ignored. If you don't talk to any of these people, if you don't organize with any of these people, and if they are not at tables that you're having about reproductive health, justice, policy, then you're at the wrong table and you need to question where they are. And so remember those things as we move forward so that we can build something that sees everybody.
Thank you for that. And I want to thank you all again for these amazing responses to these questions and for the conversation. But before I wrap up, I just want to ask you all, how can folks get involved? I mean, we're doing the work, and if you're not doing the work and you're interested in doing the work, where can you go? How can you get involved?
Well, everybody has these web pages. They may be inaccessible for some folks, but it's fine to just reach out. Folks have phone numbers. Black Lives Matter always has folks available. We have locations, 3900 West Broadway here in Louisville, and we're also willing to go anywhere in the state to sit with our folks and talk about what is coming up and what could be strategies to be built for healthy lives and pathways. We also have our reproductive justice convening coming up with Sister Song in Dallas I think it's the last weekend of August. Let's Talk About Sex. That website is up, but like I said, you can always call and reach out to somebody to see how to get access to those. If folks want my email, I can get that to you, and we can get a scholarship for people who may have a little bit of financial situation.
Elle?
Yeah, so one way that folks get involved is to host fundraisers for organizations who are supporting youth access to abortion. And you can do that just by a fundraiser. One of the young people that I work with, Livia from Gen Z for Change, she's 19 years old and she raised almost $2 million for abortion funds over the 5 days. And that was just taking an opportunity on the internet. Obviously Matt Gaetz attacked her, but I think that's you don't have to be super savvy with being at an advocacy org or as an executive director. You can just be a 19-year-old on the internet, and you can raise $2 million. So like, it doesn't have to be 2 million, it could be 100, it could be 50. And you could just do that by like mobilizing your community and raising funds for people to be able to leave the state, especially those who are in states that will have abortion bans. Another thing is like, you can get involved. It's going to take a while for abortion funds to have capacity to train new volunteers, but follow them and when they're able to take on new volunteers, sign up for that, especially if you speak another language besides English. We know people who are have limited English skill capabilities often also have the other barrier of language when making appointments and scheduling everything. It becomes increasingly harder for them. So definitely volunteer in that way. I Need an A is another organization that is always looking to help update their database of abortion clinics that are available, and have accurate information of like phone number, address, to make sure that people are going to real clinics, not fake clinics, because that has happened as well. But also just like using TikTok and using YouTube and to educate people around you and being a resource for the people in your life, that they know that they won't experience stigma for abortion, regardless if they're straight, trans, non-binary, but that you're there to support them in their decision. Is just being a friendly person where people can approach for information is a good way to get involved.
I definitely second the fundraising part. Maybe it's just because we just wrapped up our fiscal year at Sweet Evening Breeze, but we always constantly need funding for the programs that we provide. And of course, if you don't feel comfortable donating to an organization or a nonprofit, direct giving too helps. And then, let's see, I think something that comes to mind too is don't assume that people know where their resources are. That's something I've learned a lot. I think just working in the nonprofit sector in Louisville, I find that we are not communicating as well as we should. And there are sometimes I learn about programs that other organizations do that I had no idea, and they're doing some great work. And I sometimes just assume that people know about these things, and they don't, and they're underused. And so if you have a chance, an opportunity to talk about a program or a service that someone is providing, then do it. Just get those services out there and known.
Thank you for that, Stuart. And before I wrap up, I like how you said that. I think that accountability is a big part of this too. And we have to hold ourselves accountable in this fight as well, assuming that we all don't know everything. So definitely reach out. I think this call has been amazing. I think that a lot of us now know something that we didn't know this morning. So I think that mobilizing, staying consistent, and making sure that we're keeping our network large and open and very inclusive as well. I think that'll help this fight become a little bit easier along the way. So thank you all three for your amazing responses. You guys were great. I enjoyed chatting with you all. I enjoyed the education that you guys put out, and I appreciate it, along with, I'm sure, Breaking Barriers Council. I'm going to wrap up my part and kick it off to my lovely friend Kylie. She is going to kind of wrap up our call for the day. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Katima, and thank you to all our attendees for your attentiveness and the great, robust discussions in the chat, and our panelists who are awesome and have educated us so much on these really important nuances about abortion access in Kentucky. So in closing, we're just going to do some audience questions, final comments, and then we'll wrap up. And so the first question in the Q&A is, how long will the Kentucky injunction be in effect? So I could answer this question because I work on the legal team and the ACLU. And so with the temporary injunction procedurally, what that is we're asking the court to block the enforcement of a law, right? And so we have a temporary injunction in place, and it's going to be in effect until there's a trial on the merits. The trial on the merits is when the judge answers the question specifically that we're asking the court to consider, and that is whether or not the Kentucky state constitution, the language regarding bodily autonomy and right to privacy, whether there's an implied right to abortion access. So until there is a hearing and a trial on that specific question, the abortion access is restored in Kentucky for the time being. So I hope that makes sense. Hold on, there's something in the chat. Okay. The next question is, having been a nurse before 73, does anyone know of programs that will be needed to support the unintended consequences of no abortions?
Can you repeat that?
Yes, sorry. Having been a nurse before 73, does anyone know of programs that will be needed to support the unintended consequences of no abortions?
Of no abortions? Is that what it was?
Yes.
Oh, like I mentioned earlier, there are networks of folks who continue to do this work. I think maybe you've also heard like the argument of like, this isn't the Handmaid's Tale, and it is not. Nobody's running around in secret. People are very careful and very secure with helping people who cannot get to a location. Becoming an abortion doula, that is actually a thing where you are supporting somebody who is going through and needing an abortion. And there are other ways to support people to get an abortion, getting them rides to other states. So that is definitely taking place. We do have several states that are not going to do the, what is it called when somebody gets sent back to another state because it's illegal or they committed a crime?
When you're extradited?
Yes. Supporting people who may enter into that process just because the state they came from, is meddling all up in their business. But there are very secure networks that have been built since before Roe that are still active right now with elders and young folks really taking care of people to make sure that they can get the services that they need. So even when Roe came down, all folks did was really strengthen our network. So that we can support each other wherever we're at and make sure that things are very safe and secure, get into contact with our legal folks and have the best, safest way to get somebody an abortion.
Just to also add to that, I'm gonna put in a resource called the Refro Legal Defense Line. They also have a bail fund there for anyone who is accused of managing their own abortion or has a stillbirth or a miscarriage that becomes seen as suspicious and they're accused, definitely reach out to the Refro Legal Helpline. They'll be able to assist people who experiencing those. For example, with Lizelle Herrera, which happened in South Texas, where she was accused of managing her own abortion. And Refro Legal Defense Fund was able to set bail for her. She had like a $500,000 bail. So even if you think like, oh man, I got this person has a $1 million bail, reach out to them. They have the resources and the legal team available to support people who experience that.
Thank you so much, Eleanor. So I'm going to take one of the questions out of turn because I want to end on Amendment 2 and have Heather Ayer just do a quick plug about that. So this question is, can the American Medical Association and doctors and nurses become more involved in this critical issue? I have thoughts, but does anyone have?
I mean, I have thoughts too. I just think, the obvious answer is yes, if you ask me, but I think it's more of a personal fight because I think that sometimes people's jobs can be at risk if they're out, if they're doing these types of work, unfortunately. But yes, but like I said, I have thoughts, but I think it's a personal opinion and a personal choice. I'm not here to force the choice to anybody, but I do think that yes, there's definitely a way to be involved in this critical issue.
I'm going to say they're already involved. HIPAA protects a lot of what they need to do, and having that oath to make sure that it takes place. Many of them were have always been angry that this line of healthcare is totally interrupted. We don't see any other type of interruption of healthcare except for abortion, and so a lot of them have to be careful. It's not necessarily their jobs. We also have to remember that a lot of people have made it very dangerous for folks to even give an abortion, to even service people for abortion. So we don't want to erase that. While we're really angry that people are taking control over somebody's body autonomy, we are really looking at a very dangerous situation where, buildings have been bombed, people have been, passed away and murdered. We want to make sure that everybody is safe. So they have a lot to look at, but they're also here in a lot of these networks, supporting people, funding folks, helping people find resources. We had a call with our network folks, and half of them were doctors. And I was like, oh, hey, y'all cute. They were cute though. But it's really great to see people come together and not really be so scared that they can't do anything, that they're taking their time. We're talking about what healthcare looks like for ourselves in WellCare, and then being able to move through with the initiatives that we need to build.
Michaela, thank you, Chanel.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, and I'm also just like gushing over Kcv being attacked by the cutest baby. Okay, had to just say it. When we're talking about doctors and nurses involvement, I also just want to uplift that this issue is so intersectional. And so, yes, there is a history of violence for physicians and nurses who provide this care, but there's also the intersectional piece of it. Maternal health has been uplifted. There's infant health, there's just reproductive care altogether. And so even though, like Kcv said, it may be a personal choice for how involved a physician gets, there's so many spaces for physicians and doctors to allow, and nurses to allow their voices to be heard, to push back on some of these crazy legislative bills that are being passed that even target their daily practices, the practice that they themselves are trained to do. So I empower folks to speak up when they feel led, and to also realize that there are tons of spaces where you can leverage your skills and still have a great and important impact on the community. And for folks who want to continue to learn that, obviously, please follow Breaking Barriers. We try to uplift this. We try to educate folks on this. And so we are always happy to partnership with folks outside of just on the ground folks, legal folks, doulas. Like, we are very inclusive. So if you feel like you need some help and some guidance on how to plug in, please reach out to us. We are happy to help.
Okay, and the final question, I'm going to go ahead and let Heather Eyre answer.
Hey everyone, my name is Heather Eyre. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the campaign coordinator at the ACLU of Kentucky. The final question is if the amendment to, basically, if the ballot initiative that is on the ballot in November, which is Amendment 2, if it fails, will Kentucky be a solid, safe abortion access state? So I know a lot of you on the call were talking, we're chatting back and forth about the ballot initiative. So there is a constitutional amendment on the ballot in November. It's Amendment 2, and it is a very confusingly written amendment. It is not straightforward, which is typically how ballot initiatives go. And it's, like I said, it's confusing. Basically, what will happen if it passes are, Kentucky's constitution will be permanently changed, amended to say that nothing in the constitution will protect abortion access. That there are no exclusions or exceptions for rape or incest, no exceptions for life of the birthing person. There would be nothing. So we are encouraging everyone to vote no. We can go down a whole rabbit hole of the constitutional amendment, but the most important thing right now to get across is to vote no. we have done a lot of research, a lot of polling. There's a whole campaign. It's called Protect Kentucky Access. I'm putting that link in the chat if you want to get involved. Please go put your email address in. You'll be updated. We have a campaign manager. Chanel is one of the chairs of the campaign. We're so lucky to have her on those weekly meetings and helping us make decisions and leading us through that, because this is going to take everyone. It's going to take, it doesn't matter what your party affiliation is. It doesn't matter if you're pro-choice, pro-life, pro-whatever. What we have found in the research and the polling is that even people who they say that they are pro-life do not agree with a total ban on abortion with no exceptions. It's nuanced, it's not straightforward. I, for one, am like pro-abortion no matter what, but not everyone, that's not everyone's opinion in Kentucky, and that's okay. It's going to take people talking to their friends, talking to their families, talking to people who are close with them, having hard conversations, especially cisgender white women, to be quite honest, are going to need to step up and have tough conversations with people they love, because it's a scary time. If the constitutional amendment passes, there will be no legal ground to protect abortion in Kentucky. The only thing that is protecting it right now are it's like all the legal things that like Kylie and the legal team are working on. But if we lose in November, then it's over. There's nothing left to do. So please sign up for information on Protect Kentucky Access. There will be opportunities to canvass. There'll be opportunities to phone bank, to text bank, to host your own house parties, and really just to do relational organizing how you want to do it. We're not here to tell you how you have to talk to people. If you think that in your community, hosting house parties, having your friends over, whatever you think works best in your communities, do that. And if you have, I see that someone has reached out to Protect Kentucky Access. I know that we are like staffing up. I don't work on the campaign. We have a campaign manager. He's hiring. Look at the job openings. If you want to apply, please apply to those. Chanel, if you want to add anything to the PKA aspect. But yeah, thank you all so much for being so involved and interested in wanting to continue this fight.
Yeah, I definitely want folks to come out to the events, definitely check in with those folks. Notice I'm saying go to the website, but I'm also like, we need to be really having these interpersonal communications and meeting up with our people. It makes you feel better. It makes us really evaluate what is needed, and we need volunteers to help us. We're gonna start doing some phone banking soon. I don't know how soon, but we are definitely getting out into the state and just making sure that people know. We have heard that, yeah, it's been tiring. It's been a tiring entire panorama. That's what I call the pandemic. And it's going to continue to be tiring as long as we don't take care of ourselves and keep trying to move work. We want us to be well, but we also want us to be able to get this out to folks. We have a lot of territory to hit. So when those volunteer positions come open, please find time to like do an hour or 30 minutes. It all counts for something. Canvassing anything that we need, because they are really banking on this ballot initiative to go through. And we would definitely have a bigger fight on our hands for this.